I'm Ray. Ray who? Ray Skywalker.
Is it the laughable conclusion to an embattled trilogy or just your average case of identity theft? Either way, it's Star Wars, The Rise of Skywalker, the third installment of Disney's attempt to let you know there's a Star Cruiser hotel room in Orlando that you can rent for just $2,000 per person a night. Hello again, everyone. I'm Gene Siskel of the Chicago Tribune, and joining me today is another film critic from the Chicago Sun-Times. Roger is out for the moment due to a mechanical engine failure during a recent trip to Indonesia that left him stranded on a deserted island for 2 weeks. While my professional rival and personal nemesis is recovering from eating his own excrement in order to survive, here to help me review Star Wars, The Rise of Skywalker, is this guy.
Hello everyone, I'm Richard Roper of the Chicago Sun-Times, and before we get started, I'd like to personally thank and acknowledge my colleague and mentor, Roger Ebert, who I would never call my professional rival or my personal nemesis due to the fact that I'm basically a Hollywood lapdog with aspirations of getting cozy with Hollywood's ruling elite. You see, there's an unwritten rule in Hollywood that says that you need to say nice things about everyone in order to be given a seat at the table. So if you're expecting an honest-to-God review of this movie, or any for that matter, you certainly won't get it from me. Anyway, Gene, thanks again for having me.
Richard, welcome to the show. And before we begin, I have to say that was a very honest admission of your professionally compromised attitude toward movies. I can't imagine that was something you learned from Roger.
No, that's just my way of doing things. I look at you and Roger and see more than just two film critics. I see two men of influence, which I think has gotten easier nowadays because of social media, because anyone can purchase bots to make their following look larger than it actually is. Fake as it may be, it's the projection of influence that matters. But who knows, Gene, maybe someday when you're too old and your producers want to go in a different direction, I'll be sitting in your chair talking with Roger about movies.
Mr. Roper, you may eventually get this chair, but I can assure you the audience won't accept an imitation, particularly when there's a bait and switch involved. And I think that's an appropriate pivot into The Rise of Skywalker, because by the time you're finished watching this movie, the cold reality of Disney's penultimate plan for the trilogy begins to settle in, which was to kick the beloved original characters out of the way, steal their namesake, and pretend like they didn't even exist. That becomes manifest in the intro we just showed when the Daisy Ridley character adopts the Skywalker name at the end of this movie, despite having no ties to the Skywalker bloodline. In this third and final installment of the calamitous Disney sequels, the Resistance discovers that Emperor Palpatine has returned and is amassing a massive fleet capable of conquering the galaxy. As Rey continues her Jedi training while struggling with the revelation of her Palpatine lineage, she and her allies race to stop the Emperor's final order, and in the saga's climactic confrontation, Rey defeats the Sith once and for all, bringing the sequels to their inevitable conclusion.
You know, Gene, I know you're going to disagree, but I have to say I absolutely loved this movie.
Holy Moses, you must be joking.
I'm being totally serious. The epic scope of the story, the dazzling effects, it all had such a grandeur about it, and I think it reminds us why we go to the movies.
Mr. Roper, I'll be honest, those sound like the kind of generic comments that someone would formulate with the help of ChatGPT. When Roger told me you gave this movie 3 out of 4 stars in the review you wrote, I thought he was setting me up for a punchline. Are you saying you actually liked this movie?
I'm saying it doesn't have to be great for it to be good. I mean, come on, Gene, you have to admit that Daisy Ridley really holds her own on screen, and there's a real presence about her.
I'm sorry, but are you the Mr. Roper from the Chicago Sun-Times or the one from Three's Company who couldn't figure out that Jack wasn't gay? I really have to wonder if you're being deliberately contrarian to appease the overlords at Disney who created this cinematic disaster.
Gene, I fail to see the comparison. If you'll recall, Mr. Furley didn't know Jack wasn't gay either.
Mr. Roper, it's only out of respect for Roger that I don't throw you out of the building on your ear, because in this moment I'd be remiss to remind the audience that you once praised the romance between Padme and Anakin in Attack of the Clones when Christian Hayden spoke the lines, "I hate sand and I'm haunted by the kiss." Heck, even the teenagers sitting in front of me were laughing at that.
Well, I thought it was sweet.
You thought it was sweet. Wow. Okay. Anyway, back to the issue at hand. Starting with an opening crawl that immediately ruins the element of surprise before we're given a single shot, with the reveal that Emperor Palpatine has somehow returned after electrocuting himself, falling down a bottomless shaft, and being blown up inside Death Star 2.0, and kudos to whomever came up with that Looney Tunes idea.
I think you're missing the point here, Gene. Sequels are all about giving the audience what they want, only bigger, and in the process, raising the stakes even higher for all the characters involved. Starkiller Base was capable of destroying worlds much faster than the original 2 Death Stars.
Richard, raising the stakes for the characters isn't a green light to create the same objectives over and over again. In the span of 3 movies, we have Death Star 3.0 pretending to be Starkiller 1.0, Palpatine 2.0 with no eyeballs and melted fingers, Yoda 2.0 with an orange vagina, Luke 2.0 in the form of a Mary Sue, and Death Star 4.0 in the form of a Star Destroyer fleet, not to mention another subplot involving children with a hidden identity.
Well, you know what they say. Life is a wheel that keeps on turning, and it always comes back to where it started.
Life is a wheel, eh? Well, apparently Abrams and company couldn't get their fill of it because after handing us their lazy McGuffins in the previous 2 movies, they not only introduce another McGuffin, this time in the form of a wayfinder that points to the location of the Emperor in Death Star 4.0, they then have the audacity to give us a MacGuffin to find the MacGuffin in the form of a dagger that will lead them to the Wayfinder that will lead them to the Emperor. This is absolutely ludicrous plotting.
That's why I gave this movie 3 stars rather than 4. Seems like they didn't know how to generate conflict, so they ended up giving the characters something to do in the form of these dumb little Easter egg hunts. It didn't spoil the movie for me, though.
And in the first 25 minutes, you get nothing but extended action sequences, so aimless and poorly paced that its dramatic effect on the story is virtually rendered a null. The resistance becomes so aimless that they eventually wind up at Mardi Gras getting anal beads in a scene that the writers used to try and misdirect the audience about her being an orphan, because surely we'll all be surprised to later find out she's actually Palpatine's granddaughter, and her parents hid her from the Emperor in yet another recycled plot point designed to ape the original movies and steal the characters' backstories.
I would agree that it was somewhat telegraphed, but I have to admit I was genuinely surprised to find out that General Hux was the spy that secretly alerted Poe Dameron to the Emperor's return. To me, that was really great theater.
What were you going to tell Ray before? You still on that? Oh, I'm sorry, is this a bad time?
Sort of is a bad time, Paul.
Well, it's later. This is why we're getting option. If you're going to let something off your chest, maybe now's not the worst time.
I'm the spy.
What? You?
Great theater? Mr. Roper, not only was Jack living in your building with 2 girls, there were also a number of misunderstandings that occurred while you were landlord of the tenement. You're not knocking on my door with this one, and you most certainly aren't taking any steps that are new.
That's cute, Gene, but if you paid closer attention to the plot, you'd realize everything in this movie is the result of cause and effect. When Hux reveals that he's the spy, it comes at just the right time because the guards are about to capture and kill the good guys. And it's because of the Force dyad connection between Kylo Ren and Rey that Kylo is able to snatch the anal beads off Rey, which allows the First Order to track where they came from.
Richard, cause and effect, born from plot contrivance, doesn't validate how the characters manage to get from A to B when you're shoehorning the solution into every plot complication. And that's evidenced by the very fact that they just happen to get sucked into a sandpit that just happens to drop them directly into a cave that leads them to the MacGuffin.
Hold on for a second. Which MacGuffin are you talking about?
I'm referring to the MacGuffin that leads to the MacGuffin.
I'm sorry, my memory's a bit fuzzy on which MacGuffin that was.
The MacGuffin that leads to the MacGuffin is the dagger MacGuffin. The MacGuffin that's being led to is the Wayfinder MacGuffin. What it ends up leading to is another plot contrivance when they just happen to be standing in the only location where the MacGuffin that leads to the MacGuffin could possibly reveal the location of the MacGuffin that's being led to.
I guess I see what you're saying about there being some confusing MacGuffins.
Meanwhile, John Boyega is standing around like the moppish idiot they've made him out to be all series, where he can do nothing but point and yell at the action that's taking place. In the scene where Kylo Ren tracks them down and there's a forced showdown between him and Rey over the fate of a ship they believe Chewie's been captured on, Rey mistakenly thinks she's used the dark side to accidentally destroy the ship and blames herself for Chewie's apparent death. And it's the writers giving us another lame signpost that Rey could be turned to the dark side.
Again, I have to disagree with you over the effectiveness of this plot point, because as you may recall, it was Chewie who had the dagger, so when the ship explodes, they think they've lost the MacGuffin that leads to the MacGuffin, and now their only course of action is to get the information from the MacGuffin that leads to the MacGuffin out of 3PO's memory bank. But of course, 3PO can't access Sith language because it's forbidden, so now they have to find a guy who can crack the forbidden code.
So what you're basically saying is that after losing the MacGuffin that leads to the MacGuffin, they now need to find the MacGuffin that leads to the MacGuffin that leads to the MacGuffin.
Yeah, basically.
Exactly. And what that leads to is another planet where they just happen to run into Poe Dameron's jilted former lover, who happens to have a coin that can give them safe passage onto a capital ship, which just happens to be the ship Chewie was taken to. And before they embark on that mission, we get another ear-scraping exchange of woke language where Dameron's former main squeeze tells him, "They win by making you think you're alone," reassuring him that the resistance has strength in numbers, thus giving a nod to the people this movie was made for, those being the ones who care more about politics than Star Wars.
I actually didn't have a problem with the coded language, but I wasn't crazy about some of the dialogue in that sequence where they're just ripping on each other's former jobs. When we find out Dameron was a former spice trader, there's this silly exchange between them where he's pointing out Rey's former job as a scavenger and Finn's former job as a janitor.
Well, I can certainly relate to the janitor, because having to review these movies is basically the same as having to unclog someone else's toilet.
Maybe so, but you know, I thought we got a pretty satisfying conclusion where Rey defeats the Emperor and Kylo turns back into Ben Solo and sacrifices himself to save Daisy Ridley's character. There was really no other way it could have ended, and I thought it nicely wrapped things up.
Nicely wrapped things up? Mr. Roper, stop me if this sounds familiar. We get a climactic scene where the Emperor, playing the role of the Emperor, shows Rey, playing the role of Luke, that her fleet is being destroyed in order to turn her to the dark side, and it's Kylo, playing Darth Vader, who sacrifices himself to save Rey, also playing the role of Darth Vader, who then kills the Emperor in exactly the same way. In the clip we showed at the beginning, Disney then concludes the heist when Rey takes the Skywalker name. And when it's all said and done, you can't help but be reminded of the movie Memento, where Guy Pearce is casually driving around in the car that belonged to the guy he just killed.
Geez, I mean, when you put it that way.
No other way to put it, Richard. Disney figured if they simply placed triumphant music at the end that the audience would surely exult in it, but it may as well have been a funeral organ playing at a Catholic service where you get a long 3-day viewing to mourn the body. But it's not just the general audience they managed to offend with their insipid sequels. By making a Star Wars trilogy for young girls, they reduced the iconic franchise to nothing more than a Twilight film admired by teens on Team Jacob or Team Edward, based on which guy they thought was hotter. But as you'll see from the following clip, Disney failed so hilariously hard in that attempt that they wound up angering the only audience they had managed not to alienate.
Who are you?
I'm Rey.
Not
Rey
you.
who?
Not you. Oh God. No. No!
Please no. Please no. Where the fuck is Ben?
Rey Skywalker.
Clearly those girls were on Team Kylo and didn't get what they wanted. And neither, for that matter, did John Boyega, who just kept hopelessly waiting for the right moment to profess his love to the girl who had sadly friend-zoned him. This movie is heinous. This trilogy was trash. And Star Wars just isn't special anymore. Okay, that's it for now. Join us next time when we review some more of this woke crapola. Until then, we'll see you at the movies, and the balcony is closed.
Promotional considerations were paid for by the following. They have some dignity, SWAT team. Life's full of humiliating moments you wish you could have back. So why not stop them dead in their tracks? With this crack commando unit assembled from the most secretive special ops programs around the world, they'll conduct a full workup of how you unintentionally tend to lower your dignity and be there to stop you from making yet another move you'll later regret. Just sign up for their surveillance program and rest assured, those cringe moments won't be a problem for you anymore. The Have Some Dignity SWAT team. You'll love it when the plan comes together. The Traffic Beater Jetpack. Are you counting the number of hours you've lost to just sitting on the highway trying to get somewhere? Why not flee the scene with our vector thrust turbo rocket mounted seamlessly under your vehicle's chassis? With its directional thrust nozzles to lift your car upward and away, you'll barely have time to catch all the envious looks from the drivers stuck on the road below you. Manufacturer assumes no responsibility for improper or unintended use of this product. The Traffic Beater Jetpack. See you later, sucker. The Blender Beast Genetic Injector. If you are not comfortable in your own human skin, maybe you relate more to our neighbors in the animal kingdom. With just 2 injections per week from our lab-tested and approved serum, unlock your inner species so people can finally see the real you, loud and proud. Side effects may include heightened smell sensitivity, milk addiction, a sudden case of the zoomies, loss of public inhibition, and territorial behavior. The Blender Beast Genetic Injector. When humans continue to work up the nerve of assigning everyone at birth. Consult your dog's vet before use.